Welcome to 10 Minute History, a history podcast where I will discuss a history topic in 10 minutes or less. After a 10-minute lecture period, I will open up to a short Q&A for the topic at hand. This week we will be discussing Thomas Fitzgerald, or Silken Thomas, the Lord Deputy of Ireland who launched the first of many revolts against English rule. So to begin our discussion, we gotta go back to the 12th century. Ireland was under the rule of Great Britain for over 800 years, and it all started with a Norman invasion of Ireland. I'll go into more detail in that in another episode, focusing on the Anglo-Norman Kingdom of England and its invasion of Ireland. But the short of it is that in 1169, King Henry II of England launched an invasion of Ireland. In less than 10 years, a treaty was signed where most of the kings of Ireland, including High King Rory O'Connor, pledged fealty to King Henry. In the coming centuries, Ireland would be largely autonomous. The nation was seen as a territory ruled directly under the lordship of the King of Ireland, but leadership was still largely of Ireland's own people, still working out of the mechanisms of Ireland's traditional Gaelic chiefdoms. Direct rule was maintained by the Irish clans of old, and lordships were largely made up of Anglo and Norman dynasties who had integrated into Gaelic society during King Henry II's rule. And this is where we get to Silken Thomas. Thomas Fitzgerald, 10th Earl of Kildare. The Fitzgerald dynasty were originally Cambro-Norman, an ethnic group originating from Wales. They arrived in Ireland in 1169, and in 1316, John Fitzgerald was given earldom over the Kildare county in Ireland. The family's successes would lead to the dynasty being given the title Lord Deputy of Ireland. The Lord Deputy was the monarch's representative in the executive in ruling over Ireland. Born in 1513, Thomas was the son of Gerald Fitzgerald and his first wife, who was a distant cousin of Henry VII. Known as Silken Thomas for his richness of clothes and the silken banners his soldiers would wear on their helmets, Thomas was caught up in a conspiracy of sorts. He was appointed Earl and Deputy Governor of Ireland at the age of 21 when his father was summoned to London. However, Thomas soon had begun to hear rumors that his father had been arrested and executed in the Tower of London. He would soon fear that his uncles and he would suffer the same fate. In 1534, he would summon a council to St. Mary's Abbey in Dublin. He had with him a force of 140 elite mercenaries known as gallows glasses. He would publicly renounce his fealty to his cousin Henry VIII. Chancellor Archbishop John Allen pleaded with him, attempting to dissuade such a rash decision. The stories say a poem was recited giving praise to the deeds of his ancestors, and that Thomas had begun to waver. But then one of his consorts convinced him otherwise. Thomas fled with his militia, and the council ordered Fitzgerald's arrest. Others close to him, family, friends, and the Earl of Desmond would all try to reason with him, but to no avail. Fitzgerald and his gallows glasses would lay siege to Dublin Castle. His army was routed, and the castle held out, but Thomas's army would find Chancellor John Allen and execute him. He would soon find that this was a grave mistake. Amid his accusations, in the early days of the Reformation, the Catholic Church should have been an obvious supporter of his rebellion. However, because of John Bishop's execution, they refused to help him. Thomas's army would begin to dwindle, and his allies began to desert him. Lord Leonard Grey, named new Lord Deputy of Ireland, wished to avoid further conflict. Fitzgerald was offered a pardon in exchange of a laying down of arms. Thomas agreed and was sent to the Tower of London. He would stay in prison for a year without any news of a pardon. On February 3rd, 1537, Thomas Fitzgerald and his 5 uncles were all executed. Ironically, his fears proved a self-fulfilling prophecy. His father had not been executed as of his rebellion, though reports say Gerald Fitzgerald died of grief in 1534 upon hearing news of his son's rebellion. This quick, shoddily carried out rebellion would set the stage for Henry VIII and his daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, and their policy of surrender and regrant. A policy in which the Irish clans of old were dissolved and land was seized and redistributed within England's late feudal system. The goal was to assimilate Gaelic leadership under the Tudors into a newly christened Kingdom of Ireland. Basically, as long as you swore fealty to the Tudors and absolved yourselves of the Catholic Church, you would get your land back. This would be the first step in Great Britain's history of prejudice and cultural dissemination of both Gaelic culture and Ireland's loyalty to the Catholic Church. This policy was actually the more tame solution among the Tudors of how to deal with Ireland, among more radical dissenting opinions of just outright extermination. It's hard to say how much of an impact Silken Thomas had on the events to come. Was there a conspiracy from the beginning to do away with the Fitzgerald dynasty? Had Silken Thomas not launched his revolt, would Great Britain had sought to bring Ireland under its direct control? I personally think Ireland was doomed either way. The Kildare rebellion just became the perfect scapegoat for what perfectly lined up with the Tudors' policy and rule throughout all their territories at the time. Needless to say, the Kildare rebellion would be far from the last. For the next 4 centuries, Ireland would engage in nearly 20 different revolts before ultimately reaching its inevitable war for independence. One of the bloodiest and longest lasting would take place not even a century later. With the aid of the Catholic Church, the civilian militia known as the Irish Confederacy would take control of Ireland for a good 10 years before it was brought to a bloody end at the hands of Oliver Cromwell. This will be a topic of discussion in the next part of my Irish series. Next week, however, I will discuss another topic moving away from Irish history. Let me know in the comments section what our next topic of discussion should be. Until next time, this is K-Max signing out.